It's incredible the way God shows his love, his compassion, his care through his creation. And oftentimes, that means it has fur or feathers.
True stories.
that make us say,
Wow, God.
wow, God.
Wow, God.
I get a call. This is the Russian embassy. Just want you to know we read your story about Buddy and we're sending it to President Putin. I couldn't believe it.
The way to reach my heart was through animals again. And he did it exceedingly, abundantly more than I could have ever asked for.
Here I was, this little broken, abused kid. Now I'm helping other kids that are abused and broken and need someone to just give them unconditional love. And that's the horse.
Hi, I'm Melony McKay, and I'm so glad to share this special Wow God Stories episode with you. The way that God shows his love, compassion, and care through those who can't even communicate with us, besides with a lick and a tail wag, our animals, our pets. It's amazing how they can sometimes demonstrate the love and care of God in ways that maybe people around us can't. Makes me think of John Karakian and his best friend Buddy, who literally had an impact globally, from coaches to presidents to queens. Buddy opened the door for literally millions to hear about Jesus.
Hi, my name is John Karakian. My dog Buddy, he's a chocolate lab. He passed away in March of 2019, and he wanted to walk, so we'd walk the neighborhood for 12 and a half years in the community, getting to know people I would have never met normally. But when you've got a dog and you walk relentlessly, and after a while, people get to know you. I never talked about Jesus, it just never came up, just being friendly to people over all those years, getting to know them, talking to them. But one day in 2019, March, Buddy passes away. It was sort of suddenly. God took him home. It was sudden in my house. And we didn't walk for a few days. Then all of a sudden I get a knock on my door. There's a group of about 50 people out there. And I said, what's going on? The lady says, we haven't seen you walking. Everybody's worried. I go, well, who are you people? I didn't know you cared. They said, well, everybody really appreciated you. We haven't seen you. We want to know you were okay. I said, yeah, I'm okay, but Buddy passed away. And they said, well, you better tell people, because if you don't, they're going to start calling the police, because everybody's thinking something happened to you. Thought, well, they must be right, because there's a group out here. So I went back into my house and I wrote a letter to everybody. I said, dear neighbors, thank you so much for all the times that I walked by your house, me and Buddy. I don't know your names, but you treated us so nice. And I put a picture of me and Buddy in there. I took one of the routes me and Buddy walked, probably around 200 homes, and I put it in all their mailboxes. And just within hours, people were knocking on my door and putting all kinds of sticky notes and sympathy cards. I was getting food and everything at the door because Buddy had this impact. This went on for 2 or 3 weeks. It's such an outpouring that I felt like I had to say thank you. So I wrote another letter. I said, thank you for all you've done. And I took a picture of the front of my house with all the outpouring of sympathy of the artifacts and all the things that were left, the memorials. And I stapled that to my letter. And also, a friend of mine had said that our church was having an Easter production, and it was the first one they were going to have in about 5 years. And they had about 400 tickets left over. So I said, can I have them? And my idea was I was putting 2 in each envelope and took it to each house. And I said, I'll see you in the lobby if you could be there. It's the only way I know how to say thank you for what you've done for me and Buddy. So here I am in the church lobby, the night of the Easter production. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Am I really doing this? But I'm doing this mostly because it was helping me with my grief for the loss of Buddy. I didn't want Buddy to just die. He was really a big deal. So here I am in the lobby. All of a sudden, here comes some people. I recognize them. They keep coming in. They keep coming in. One person came in. I'm an atheist, but Buddy goes to heaven. I said, what do you mean Buddy goes to heaven? You said you're an atheist. How, you don't believe in heaven? He goes, we don't go to heaven, but he goes. So he went in and sat down in the church. A Buddhist came in. Agnostic came in. All kinds of unbelievers and unsaved came in. I lost count how many. They all came in, but they all said they came for Buddy. After that was over that night, I went home. I laid down. I said, Lord, I'm done with this Buddy stuff. I'm just going to go to bed and wake up, and I've done my part for you, for Buddy, for me. I woke up in the morning and no, I had this burden on my heart. I knew it was the Lord. I knew he was bugging me. I'm saying, what do you want me to do? I want you to keep sending those letters you've been sending. You just keep going to those mailboxes. You just keep going to those people. Lord, how can I do that? The letter says Easter. I can't be doing this. Easter's behind us now. They're going to think I'm nuts. And he just said to me, you just do the walking and I'll do the talking. And he put it in my mind how Noah was told by the Lord to build an ark. Now here he is out in the middle of a desert. He's building an ark. I could see maybe if Noah was started building it by the ocean, it would have made sense maybe. He's building it out in the desert. And I'm sure he thought to himself, Lord, I can't build a boat out in the desert. But he did it. I thought to myself, well, if he did that, then I guess I'm going to go walking down the street saying my dog died. You want to hear about it and talk about Jesus. So for the next 8 months to the Christmas production, I walked the neighborhoods, 50 homes a day, altogether over those months, 2,200 homes and businesses. And I met everyone and I gave them all the story of Buddy, gave them a letter, told them about Jesus. And here it is, it's 90 degrees out. I'm saying, and will you come to the Christmas production? Everyone was interested. No one said no. Everyone said yes. And if I would have said, hey, mister, you need Jesus, they'd have probably run down the street and called the police. But when you said, hey, mister, my dog died, they were all ears. And then we'd start talking about the Lord. And that's how this stuff went. Everywhere I went, everyone was open. No one said no. So then Christmas of 2019, a couple hundred people show up for Buddy. And they put Buddy's picture on the big screen in the church. And how many people here in the audience today for Buddy? The pastor says a big crowd yells. So this happened again Easter 2020, Christmas 2020, then Easter 2021, Christmas 2021. And it's getting bigger and bigger. More and more hundreds are coming. In between, I'm getting contacted by different media outlets. CBN News does a broadcast. The Assembly of God does a website. Guideposts, they publish it internationally. Probably 10 or 15 other media outlets publish it. Then in 2021, I started sending them to some of the entertainer stars. I figured with the Lord, I'm going to meet the common people and I'm going to also go big. Like the old saying, go big or go home. But with the Lord, I'm going big. And then around February 2022, I heard that President Putin of Russia, that he had a black lab. So I thought maybe he'd like the story of Buddy. I called the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. A lady there, she answers, you could tell Russian accent. And I told her what happened about Buddy, how he died. And she started crying on the phone. She goes, that's such a sad story. It touches me so much. I said, I want to send this story to President Putin because I said, I know you Russians. I've read about it. You've got a long history of Christianity there. So I know you know about Jesus. Can I send this to President Putin? She goes, you email this to me. We'll let you know. So I emailed it to her at the Russian embassy. That's like in the middle of that week. Sunday morning, about 2 a.m. in the morning, I get a call from the Russian embassy. I answered, a man on the other end with a Russian accent. This is whatever he said his name is. The Russian embassy just wants you to know we read your story about Buddy. We liked it. We enjoy it. And we're sending it to President Putin. I couldn't believe it. I almost said, thank you, comrade. I didn't know how to end it. So I just said, thank you. And I hung up. And I thought to myself, did this really happen? I look at caller ID and there it is. I never heard about if President Putin got it. I never got a word on it. They did their part. That's all I know. The rest is up to the Lord. And then short time thereafter, I talked to my pastor and his wife was there and she heard the story about President Putin. She goes, you know what? I've got an idea. Why don't you send this to the Queen of England? She really likes dogs. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I called up the United Kingdom Embassy in Washington, D.C. I talked to them, told them about Buddy and Jesus and people coming to church because of a chocolate lab. They said, okay, you email this to us. I'll read it. If I like it, I'll let you know and I will forward it to the Buckingham Palace. So I emailed it to his email address. He got back to me and said, I liked it. I'm going to send it to Her Highness. A few hours later, I got an email from Buckingham Palace that Her Highness has received the story of Buddy, is reading it, enjoys it. So shortly thereafter, I'm a member of a union, 1.7 million members, a labor union. I saw a fax number on one of their publications. Well, I'm going to fax the story of Buddy just for the heck of it. Maybe they'll like it, publish it, and let Jesus come into their minds like that. We get a call from their communications place in Washington, D.C. They said, hey, we love this story of Buddy and Jesus, and we want to publish it. So they published it. Here's a story of Buddy and Jesus everywhere. Not shortly thereafter, I get this call from Washington, D.C. Is this John Karakia? And I go, yeah. We'd like to open our international convention in June in Las Vegas with you opening up the convention with a prayer. You can't do more than 2 minutes. Don't get too really biblical because we have a lot of members that have all different lifestyles. Don't want to offend anyone. I said, well, I'm going to do it the way it's got to be done. And if you think it's too offensive, I just can't do it because I'm not going to water Jesus down. He's, well, okay, but not more than 2 minutes. Just send it to us. Let me look at it. First one I wrote out was about 7 minutes long. It seemed like I could never get it shorter, but I got it down to 2 minutes. I jammed everything in there about Jesus and the Lord's in charge and to get your hearts right with the Lord. Even ended it with the verse, lead not on your own understanding, put everything in the Lord's hands. I let them see it ahead of time. All of them looked at it and nobody said anything. They let me do it. It went to 1.7 million members. It was broadcast to 3 different nations, all because of Buddy. Humans can't get this done, and Chocolate Lab's doing this. Of course, Jesus leading the way, and I was just bringing up the rear. I was Buddy's butler. After that was over, I said, Lord, am I just supposed to do this at Easter and Christmas? But in between Easter and Christmas, all those months, I don't do nothing. I just wait till Christmas again. And the Lord said to me in my heart, no. And so every day, wherever I go, to a car wash, to the restaurant, I hand them out to Muslims, Buddhists, agnostic, Hindu, saved, unsaved. Everybody says, thank you for thinking of me. Nobody ever cares about me. Thank you for smiling at me. Thank you for caring about me. The very simple things of kindness are such a big deal. They don't run away. They practically chase me down the street wanting to hear more. This is all because of Buddy. This never would have happened without Buddy. I've heard from all kinds of people about it. I got a letter from Jim Harbaugh, coach of Michigan Wolverines at the time. I got one from the office of President Biden, the office of Governor Whitmer of Michigan, Franklin Graham, his office, David Jeremiah. Everybody reading about Buddy, and something about a Chocolate Lab gets to everybody where they're interested. Everyone's open to the Lord about it.
Amazing, all because of a chocolate lab. He was able to open doors that humans can't. This is Wow God Stories. I'm Melony McKay, and God said this in Genesis 1:24, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. Who knew that God could use those creatures to get past our pain, our anger, our doubt, to let us know how much He loves and cares for us, to let us know He hears our prayers, that He is a good God. It's exactly what He did for Tina Zimmerman through a lion.
My name is Tina Zimmerman. I've always been an animal person. I grew up on a farm. I worked at a veterinary office for 25 years, and I currently train service dogs for a living. So I'm pretty used to seeing animals do amazing things on a day-to-day basis. But in 2010, my husband and I started going to Africa on short-term mission trips. We founded an organization called Harvest Guards International. I would go over and train protection dogs to guard farmers from poachers, thieves, criminals, that type of thing. The program really took off. We were able to expand and do a lot of work there, but the projects kind of tend to turn into other things. And so we were digging wells and we were building homes for homeless people that were HIV positive. And we were spending several months a year in country, just working all day, every day, doing hard work. And so we just made it a practice that at least one time every trip, we would just take a day off. We would go to Queen Elizabeth National Park in Uganda and just spend the day in God's creation and seeing all His beautiful creatures. And it's thousands of acres of savanna and mountains and lakes and rivers. And it's just such a beautiful place. You know, everybody wants to see lions. That's the big thing, is to see lions. And so when you go, you can actually hire a tracker there, and it costs like $20. And a few of the lions in the different prides wear tracking collars. And so one of the guides will go out and they have, it looks like one of those old-fashioned TV antennas, and they go out on a motorcycle and all these animals, and they just kind of hold that antenna above their head. And it's not like our GPS that says, oh, it's right there, but it'll say, well, in that general region, there seems to be some signal that says there's lion activity there or whatever. We never saw a lion. We never, ever saw a lion. Every year, we would hire a guide, never saw a lion. In 2020, again, we had been there for several weeks working. We planned our day to go out. We hired a guide, and sure enough, we got to see a lion. My husband, Brian, was so excited, and he took all kinds of pictures of it, and he showed everybody his blurry pictures of the lion. But it was just cool that we finally got to see one after 10 years of searching. In the summer, he began to not feel well, and went to the doctor. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he fought for a year. We prayed for a year. We believed for a year. But on November 6th of 2022, he went to be with Jesus. And I really struggled why God would have such a godly man, such a kind man, go through such a horrible disease and lose his life. And why would he take him from me? I was so angry at God and not even sure if I believed in God, but if I did believe in God, he's a mean God and I don't like him. And I spent the last year of my life just searching for answers to why. And there aren't always answers to why. But when the first anniversary of his passing approached, I knew where I wanted to be. I knew that was going to be a really hard day. And some of our supporters from our organization sponsored me to go back and do some work for Harvest Guards in that area. So I flew back and worked for several weeks. And then I decided that on November 6th, I wanted to be at Queen Elizabeth National Park, and I was going to take a rest, and I was going to go back to that beautiful place. And I just wanted to create a new memory for November 6th, something beautiful. And so I asked God, would you just let me see a lion? It would just be so awesome to see a lion on Brian's day of going home. November 6th, we went out into the park, and unfortunately, it's just pouring down raining that morning. And when it's raining, there's puddles everywhere, so they don't come out and you don't see much. And as we started driving, we had to drive a couple hours, and my friend said, I'm going to try to take you up this one mountain. So we started to go up the mountain, and unfortunately, it was raining so hard that the path we were on, they're just dirt paths that the animals have trod down, and it was washed out and it wasn't safe. And he apologized and he said, we're not going to be able to go up this road, but let me turn around and let's go all the way around the mountain and come up the other side. And when we got to that side, it was completely impassable. It was still raining. And he's driving along, just kind of apologizing that, we didn't get to see lions. And all of a sudden I heard him gasp. And I looked over to see what's wrong. And then I looked to see what he was looking at. And probably 100 yards down ahead of us, there was a lioness sitting on an anthill, just sitting there, very straight, watching our car. And so he stopped, and I jumped up on my seat. I'm standing on my seat out the top of the sunroof. And I'm praising God, thank you for my lion. I got to see a lion. And about that time, she comes down off the anthill. She starts walking towards our car. And I just stayed out of the car. And all of a sudden, another gold head pops out of the grass, and another gold head. And there was 4 female lions that came with 2 little cubs. They came to our car. And they laid down next to our car, and not in like a predatory way. They came in the pouring rain and laid down all around our car. And all of a sudden the clouds broke and the sun just came through and the rain went away. And I looked out the side, and here comes this massive male lion, and he's shaking his head. It looked like a movie, like in slow motion. He's shaking the rain out of his mane. And then he just lays down probably 30 feet from our car, laid down, and he's just grooming himself so majestically. And then the 2 little cubs that were with the lionesses, they start playing, and they're pouncing on each other, and they're grabbing each other's tail, and they're shaking each other's paws. And I'm just standing out the top of the car, and I just said, God, this is you. I know this is you. What a huge gift. And just breathing in the air and the sunshine in Africa, the warmth of Africa is like nothing you've ever felt. It was like you could just feel the radiance of God. And I wanted to absorb that whole experience. And I felt like, okay, God, I got it. Thank you. And we drove away. And we had traveled probably about 10 minutes. And we went down this road. And you're not going to believe what is walking up the road towards us. 6 more lions. There was 4 males and 2 females, and they're walking towards us. And then here comes another male, and they came to our car, and they laid down around our car, 7 more lions. And these, they were males, so they had the big manes and they were, yawning in their teeth and everything. And I'm taking pictures. And again, I cannot believe we are seeing another pride of lions. And so again, we stayed until we kind of felt like, well, what else do we do? I mean, how many more pictures can we take of the same thing? And it was just so unbelievably overwhelming to see another pride of lions. And so we kind of decided we should probably start to head back. You don't want to be in the park after, the sunset. So we start to drive. We take a turn to go back to the main road. And there's another pride of lions right in front of us. 7 more lions. As we were going out the park, they asked us, did you see any lions today? Because that's what everybody hopes for. And we said, we saw 3 prides of lions. And he said, you must be blessed by God, because he said, we have people who come here and stay in the lodge for 2 weeks and go out every day on safari and never see 1 pride of lions. And he said, there are only 7 prides in this entire region, and you saw 3 of them in 1 day. I know that was God. I know that God came to me in that moment and said, I love you, and I am a good God. And my plans are not your plans, but I'm still a good God. And I heard your prayers and I heard your cry, and he blessed me. And the verse Ephesians 3:20, he will do exceedingly abundantly more than you could ever ask or hope for. And that's what he did in that day. And, it would be easy to be skeptical and go, well, you're in Africa. You saw lions. But God used animals in the Bible time and time again. He shut the mouths of lions around our car. He brought them to us. He put a coin in a fish's mouth. He made a donkey speak. And so if God did it then, he's doing it now. And I'm just so thankful that he knew that for me, a little country girl that grew up around animals, the way to reach my heart was through animals again. And he did it exceedingly abundantly more than I could have ever asked for.
I love Tina's reminder of how God moves in amazing ways to let us know that he hears, that he cares. He can cut through the pain and the anger and bring his love and his hope from a lion to a horse. Like Tina, God showed me how he hears the cry of our heart through an animal, through a horse. When I was on my knees praying painfully for a child that was wandering so far away from knowing who God created them to be. I think animals are a lot like music in that they can often get into the hidden places of our heart and our soul that words simply can't. It's been a long, long journey to unpack as I've watched my daughter in the horse world. It started when she was really young. She just had this passion for horses since the moment she could talk, she could walk. And I knew it wasn't just a little girl who liked horses. It was something different. It was the first time I took her on a horse lesson, she lit up. It was the first time I had ever seen any of my kids do the thing that lights them up. You know, that thing that God just put in them that became their world. And I knew I had to do whatever it took to keep her in her world. But I'm a single mom, and the horse world isn't a cheap world. And I found this ministry, Owl Hollow Farm. It was an hour away, one way, but it was an equine therapy farm where horses were rescued and kids were rescued, and they came together. And we fell in love with the couple who runs this ministry. But more important, my daughter had a chance to volunteer there at a young age and not only begin to connect with the horses and learn about horse behavior, but also with kids with special needs as well. And we began to see the impact of these animals and these kids together. But I didn't expect to watch the impact on my own daughter happen. As she became a teenager, she went through some really hard things in life, a health diagnosis that would impact her life, bullying at school. And it all happened about the same time that my husband left. Not only did it feel like her physical life, but her friends and her family were all falling apart. She went through hard stuff, and the enemy began to attack her identity and who she was and who God created her to be. And as she struggled with things at home and she struggled with things at school, She kept volunteering at this horse farm, and it was there that we could see her stay completely anchored to who God created her to be. When she wanted to change her name around her friends and at school, she still kept her name at the farm. She could be free to be her true self around those horses. And through many years of her wrestling with who she was, she ended up coming back to that girl, that little girl who had always loved being on the farm, who was always impacted by the horses and their behavior. And it became her safe place until she could be safe being who she was all the time. It took years, this journey, for her to unpack who she truly was. But I'm so grateful that she had that anchor in her love for those horses and that farm to continue to stay connected to. When she shut me out, when I had no way of having an ear to her heart, she could still listen to her creator through a horse. Wow, God. It's amazing to think how he loves our kids even more than we do. I'm Melony McKay, and this is Wow God Stories. And today we're sharing those incredible wow God moments that he creates through his creation that often has fur or feathers. And I want to take you a little deeper into my daughter's story. The farm, Owl Hollow, where she was ministered to, continues to minister to so many others. And its story of how it came to be is in its own way a wow God story. Kathy White is the founder of Owl Hollow Farm.
My husband and I have a horse rescue and a children's therapy program. We rescue the horses, we train them to work with kids. They give the kids therapy, and it's an amazing thing to watch. My sister had a horse, and I was never allowed on it because I was too little. That was always disheartening to me because I loved the horses. They were just so majestic and so beautiful, and quite frankly, I probably needed equine therapy. Came from a really difficult childhood. My parents were extremely poor. They had 5 children. I was the 4th of those 5 kids. We lived in a cabin in the woods in Oregon. It was not nice. We had no running water. We had an outdoor toilet. And my mother was very manic depressive, would totally lose it on us kids quite often. I loved my mother with all my heart. And her and I worked through it when I became an adult. But as a child, you never knew when you were going to get beat because her personality would change on a dime. And so when opportunity presented itself to do something like this, it was like, yeah, this is what I need to do. And Bob had the horse experience. He grew up on a horse ranch in Northern California. So his knowledge and my knowledge went together well.
How did God bring you and Bob together?
He brought us together in 1998, 4 months after my first husband died. I was 19. I moved to Missouri from Oregon, met the love of my life, thought this would be the man I would grow old with, and he died when I was 42. Esophageal cancer that metastasized. He had it in his brain, his liver, he had it everywhere. I was crushed. I had 2 boys, and they were living their lives, what 18 and 19-year-old boys do, and they didn't need me. So I went to a church camp, and my boys were supposed to go with me, but they didn't go. And Bob came to that same church camp, and his kids were supposed to be with him, but they didn't go either. So I'm at this church camp, and this guy keeps staring at me. And I told my friend, if he doesn't quit staring at me, I'm going to go knock him out. Pretty soon he sits down at the dining table that I was sitting at, and he puts his hand out, and he goes, "You must be Sean and Derek's mom." And he took my hand in both of his hands. And I don't know when he let go, but when I looked up, the whole dining hall was empty. And they had taken our plates, so I don't even know if I ate. I was totally swept off my feet. Would have never dreamt that in my whole life.
Where were you with God after your first husband passed, Kathy?
I felt like he had left me alone, and I didn't understand. I had already gone through my sister dying of cancer. I had a father-in-law that I was close to that died of cancer. I had several family members. I lost my brother-in-law 7 months after my sister, and he had brain cancer. I felt like God had just left me, but I was wrong. God did have something more for me. Long story short, we got married. We lived in Concordia, Missouri. One day he called me and he said, turn the radio on. And it was Kim Meter from Crystal Peak Youth Ranch in Oregon. And he said, you've got to listen to her. She's got an amazing testimony. And so I turned on the radio, and that night when we came back home together, we sat down and said, this is what God put us together to do. And I knew it when I was listening to the radio. I was sobbing. I had tears just coming down my face, listening to her talk about equine therapy. I was like, oh my goodness. Bob had a sailboat. And I said, you can't have a sailboat and horses too. It's not going to happen. Sailboat's too expensive. So he sold his sailboat. We put that money towards a farm. Then we each got a horse, and then we each rescued another horse. And pretty soon we had 5 horses. So we went to Crystal Peaks. We did their leadership training and came back, applied to be a nonprofit. People told me it would take us at least 3 years to get our nonprofit. It took 3 months. So again, God was in that, and I knew God was in it. We've been doing it for 14 years.
You have the ministry to rescue the horses and the ministry with the kids. So share a story of a horse that was rescued and the difference it makes.
We had a horse years ago. It was one of our first ones. The horse's name was Maisie. It was a big white horse. Her back was at the top of my head. She was huge. But we rescued her and she was starving. Somebody just put her out in a pasture, let her go hungry. I guess the people that owned her died. There was 2 of them, her and her sister. So we went and we looked at these 2 horses on the way back. Bob and I talked about it. And he said, I think we need to do this. And one of the first girls we ever did therapy with bonded to that horse. And it helped her through her parents' divorce. She was struggling and she was getting into drinking and doing all sorts of things that she shouldn't be doing. I know that horse saved her because she did therapy with us for 3 years with that horse. And it was just amazing. We got Maisie healthy, and this girl loved that horse.
Share with me the unique bond between these kids and the horses. Why is equine therapy so effective?
When it comes to kids, if they're going through struggles, the horse is unconditional love. It's easier to watch it. It's hard to explain. I know kids on the autism spectrum will come up to these horses and they'll talk to the horses when they won't talk to people. They'll be having a bad day at school and they come out there and you just start brushing the horse and you see the tension just fall out of that child. Having a background in psychology, I think it is because the horse loves them unconditionally. The horse doesn't care. They don't care if they're clean, dirty, best dressed, lousy dressed. They don't care. They just love those kids to a healing process. You've seen it happen. There's a young girl that we rescued a horse and nobody could ride that horse but her. That horse is fast. That horse to this day sees her and he just comes running. Yesterday, she was there and that horse was standing at the gate just nickering for her. And the minute he saw her, he was just running back and forth because he wanted her to come over there. It just does my heart so much good to see. We expect so much from people. And that horse doesn't expect anything, maybe treats.
And there's something so simultaneously majestic and gentle
There is.
about these horses at the same time that I think these kids really are drawn to.
Yeah. We have so many kids on the foster program or that have been adopted. They need that. They need to know that no matter what life throws at them, they come there and that horse loves them. We had a little boy years ago. He was 7 years old. He had all sorts of truncal body issues. He was not aware of his body, where it was going. His arms would flail and he had trouble walking and he had no core muscles. And Bob worked with him for years until he could ride a bike. He could ride that horse independent. Now that child does all the things. He just went to prom with some girl that was gorgeous. When I created this, the one thing I said to the new board that we brought in the first time was, everyone in their life is going to have a trauma. And as you go through life and you hit these traumas, if you can learn how to manage a 1,200-pound animal, you can learn how to manage the trials you go through in your life. Losing people, having your parent away in the military, having your parents go through divorce. We had a child once that had been trafficked. He was a victim of human trafficking. But over the years, he learned that there could be a safe place. We don't preach to the kids, but I think by example, we teach them that God is the core of our life. Bob and I always say, when you come to the edge of that ledge, you're either going to step off into the abyss or God's going to teach you how to fly. And I think God teaches us how to fly all the time. He teaches Bob and I how to fly. I run into incidences all the time that I don't know how to handle without God. I don't know how I would have gotten through my life's journey. When my first husband died, I was lost. But God led me to Bob and led me to what I'm doing now, which I would have never thought I would be doing it. Here I was, this little broken, abused kid, and now I'm helping other kids that are abused and broken and need someone to just give them unconditional love, and that's the horse. Somehow I was instilled with a trust from a little kid, and I don't know where I'd be now if I hadn't been.
In the book of Psalms, it reminds us that all creation declares the glory of God. That includes those that wear fur or feathers or even scales. Through his creation, we see him. We see his hand, his care, his love, his plan. I hope this episode of Wow God Stories has given you an opportunity to see what God has created around you in maybe a little bit different way. To be clear, when we say wow God, we're talking about the one true living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and animals. He is the one who makes our hearts say,
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
My wow God story.
I wanted to share a wow God moment.
That's my wow God story. Praise God.
And I'm so thankful to God for this wow God moment.
So, thank you, God.
You've been listening to Wow God Stories, a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com.